Joyce.
You're welcome.
So the first question I want to ask you is, what do you think of the assessment at TPA?
So, do you want this coming from my position now or prior to taking edTPA?
Your position now
Okay.
as a graduate student,
So-
reflecting on your student teaching, how do you feel about it?
I feel like edTPA, this whole assessment portfolio was a great culmination of my time in the teacher education program. It's based on the cycle of effective teaching. So you're planning for your learning segment, you're teaching your learning segment, and then you're assessing your learning segment and figuring out how to move forward based on that assessment. So I feel like it was a really nice way to kind of use everything that I had taught from the program, blocks 1, 2, and 3, and implement it into this one portfolio and really show, how well I could do all those things.
Okay. Was edTPA useful for you in completing your course of study? So was it useful whenever you were going through a teaching program?
Like that last semester?
Yeah.
I believe so. So in student teaching, you're required to create a professional learning plan, a PLP. And what the PLP kind of does is help you identify your strengths and weaknesses, or not weaknesses, but areas for improvement moving forward. And so edTPA, it's split into those 3 different tasks, and then those 3 tasks have 5 rubrics that go with each of them. For elementary, it's a little bit different because we have to do math too, so it's 18 rubrics. But it all relates to, again, how you're planning for, teaching, and assessing your work. So it's so early in the morning. Can you remind me that question one more time? I'm like on a tangent.
How was edTPA useful for you completing your course of study? So how did it prepare you kind of for the end, for your student teaching?
So you're doing it during student teaching, so I don't think it was necessarily preparing me for doing student teaching, but it was definitely...
Or how did it help you overall become like a better educator?
I feel like it's again, that cycle of effective teaching, it's really kind of like zooming in on what you need to focus on when you're planning for teaching and assessing your students.
Yeah. So it makes you think about the whole thing in its entirety, not just let me get this lesson out the way.
Yes, absolutely.
And you have to actually think, do it, reflect.
Taking in your students' personal, cultural, and community assets into consideration when you're planning for that specific class, what kind of language support that you're going to put in place to help your students gain a better understanding of the language function, vocabulary, syntax, and discourse, because you guys have heard of that before.
Yes.
And then also being able to back up all of your, proposed changes to your teaching and next steps for instruction moving forward, backing that up with research and theory, because you do that with every task as well. So.
My third question is, how do you feel about edTPA? How did you feel about it as you were going through it? So when you were student teaching, in the midst of it all, how did you feel about it? Like honest.
Okay. It is so hard. It was so overwhelming. So I wasn't like super positive toward it as I was going through it. But by the end, it was like, oh, that was nothing. I could totally do that. It helped me, so I'm fine now. But it's just, I think edTPA is done in that final semester because in student teaching, they're just trying to prepare you to how much you're going to be going through as a first-year teacher as well. And so trying to juggle like, oh my gosh, I need to plan for my cooperating class, but I also need to do this edTPA stuff, and I'm also doing classroom management. So just juggling all those things is like,
just gives you a glimpse of what we're going to do, because as teachers you do a lot.
So much.
Yeah,
it won't be necessarily like this at all, but as far as being able to manage your time, because prior to the teacher education program, I was a horrible procrastinator. I still am a horrible procrastinator. You really cannot do that with edTPA.
Yeah.
So it was really difficult sometimes because I felt like I was, it wasn't fair to my kids sometimes, because I was like, I should be focusing on like what I'm going to be teaching them and how I'm going to be teaching them like this other lesson so much, like for this week, so much more than this edTPA lesson that I've already taught 3 weeks ago, because it's only one learning segment over the course of you're really like focusing in on it over the course of 3 months. So, yep.
It's kind of scary.
Sorry, I don't want to scare you guys. It's totally doable, I promise.
Okay. Our fourth one is, what was the easiest task for you to complete and why?
Task 2, video analysis. Because I did video analysis in task 2, block 2, and that's when Dr. Weatherington was teaching video analysis, and she made it so much harder than edTPA.
Really?
Like, for each of the questions that you're supposed to be responding to, as far as like, please cite evidence of a positive learning environment. So respect for and rapport with your students. She made us do 5 different examples, like to cite 5 different timestamps from our videos demonstrating that positive learning environment. There's no limit or no minimum for edTPA.
That's good.
As long as you're like able to cite that evidence in the videos, you're good to go. So I think I got that task done in one night, and I looked at my fiance and I was like, I finished this. Like, okay, like we're good. Exactly.
Also preparing you for it helped you overall.
Absolutely. For task 2 at least.
Yeah.
Now, to counteract that question, what was the most difficult or hardest task for you to complete and why?
So it was task 4 for me for a few reasons. I think the biggest one is that I pushed it off till the end because I'm a horrible procrastinator, and I was seriously up till 3 o'clock in the morning that night, just like crying, like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to finish this. I have to finish this, and I have to go to school the next day. I also taught it on equivalent fractions, and I was introducing equivalent fractions to my kiddos, so it was like way over their head, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'm not very good at math, so it's not a great time. And then, what was the third thing? I think procrastination was probably the biggest deal. You do practice task 4 though in
That's good.
block 3. So it's not as big of a deal. It's just, again, elementary candidates, you have 4 tasks to complete and everyone else only has 3. And so it's just like,
Of course.
Pam always used to say, like, you guys are so special, like, you're just so great that they feel like they have to give you another
And that's
task.
good, extra duty.
More work. Okay, which one is this one? Okay. Do you believe CSU's teacher ed program prepared you thoroughly, sorry, for edTPA? So do you feel like the program actually helped you?
Absolutely.
That's good.
Seriously, it's so crazy. So in block 2, I know that we completed a context for learning, and it's the exact same
I
thing.
literally just finished
Yeah, I
it.
did that as well.
Perfect. It's the exact same thing for task 1 and task 4, because you have to do a literacy context for learning and a mathematics context for learning. I got to practice task 2. Like I said, I got to practice task 4. And I also got to practice a little bit of task 3 as far as assessment goes, and you guys are in that assessment and curriculum class right now. So just your ability to choose an assessment that you want to analyze, and then kind of putting the data of how your class scored on that assessment into a chart, and then identifying trends and patterns from that. That's exactly what you're doing for edTPA. The only task that I didn't have any practice on was task 1, as far as completing that planning commentary. And that kind of threw me off a little bit, just because task 1 is really the foundation of edTPA, just because it's planning for everything. You're using stuff that you've created in task 1, and task 2, and task 3, and then it's that cycle. So, but they really did do an incredible job. Dr. Weatherington did a really fantastic job integrating different like assignments into all of the different blocks.
And our last question for you is, what advice do you have for teacher candidates about edTPA? Like, what gems could you drop on them?
Got it.
About how do you survive, how do you prepare for edTPA?
Okay, the first and biggest thing is do not procrastinate, just because it'll really bite you in the end. The second thing is, when you're going through your student teaching semester, you have so many different resources to use, and I would suggest making use of those resources. The people during boot camp are going to tell you how to find all of those. They're gonna save your life. And the third thing, ask for help, because there's the edTPA coordinator, edTPA graduate assistant, and your clinical faculty member that'll be working with you throughout your student teaching semester, and they're all there to give you feedback, probing questions. All you have to do is, hey, can you look over this real quick and let me know if you see anything crazy? because we want to help you get through this, because it is a hard semester. Was the hardest semester of my life so far. You know, everything is there to help you succeed. You just have to make use of those things. So.
Well, thank you for coming out.
Of
Thank you for
course.
interviewing us. Thank you for helping us with our assignment.
Of course. I hope you do well on it.
At least you.
Watch, I didn't record any of this.
Mhm.
Okay.